of you have read Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life? Let me see your hands. Do you know what the first sentence says? It is not about you. So today, I want you to remember as I'm making my comments, this is not about me. It is about the angels that God put in my life to bring me here today. It is also about the fact that you are never caught and bound by the circumstances of life. You always have a hope. You always have a dream. And you can weave your way out of that. And it may not be at the exact time you want, and it may not be what you think it might be, but there's always a way out. You're never hopeless. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. You know, I have an opportunity to talk about my college and my students to a number of people throughout this city and region and state. And invariably, one of them will say after it's over, "Where do you get your passion?" Well, I'm going to tell you today. I was raised in a very poor home. We had very little money. We didn't have running water until I was in the 8th grade. My father was a functional alcoholic. He was a heavy equipment operator. Dad worked for 8 months out of the year. He loved hunting and fishing. And so in October, he would always manage to get laid off, and then he would not go back to work until March. So our family lived on unemployment insurance and whatever he caught or whatever he killed. The feelings that I had growing up are very hard to describe. It's difficult when you have the feeling that everybody knows that you are the town drunk's daughter. When I was a senior in high school, everybody was preparing for college. There actually were only 18 of us. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I was not in the top 5% of my class. Now, you add that up and think about that with only 18 people there. My percentage in my station in that class existed so there would be a top 5%. I worked hard for what I got, and I made good passing grades. I made B's and C's, and I'm not going to talk about the other, but I worked hard. But I wasn't in the top 5%. And I knew there would not be a scholarship for me. So I had resigned myself to the fact, okay, you know you're going to have to work if you ever want to go to college. And I'll be honest with you, I had not dared to dream that there might be a way. Well, must have been around March, I had someone come down to my class and get me out of class and say, Mr. Holt, who is the superintendent, wants to see you in the office. And I'm mentally going over, what in the world have I done now? What did I do? I walked into that superintendent's office, and there was my English teacher, and there was my high school principal, who was our math teacher. And Mr. Holt looked at me, and he said, "Sally, we've got to get you registered for college." And I looked at him, and I thought, look, you know, these people know my situation. I looked at him again, and I said, "Mr. Holt, you know that I can't go. You know that if I go to college, I've got to work a few years first and try to save the money." He said, "I tell you what, you and your mother be ready Wednesday morning. We've got a meeting with the financial aid director at Henderson State University, and I'm going to come by and pick y'all up. We're going down to get you registered for class." Well, Wednesday morning came, and he picked us up, took us to college, and we met with Miss Bruce from Henderson State University. And when I left there that day, after he bought us lunch, I had a grant, a loan, a job, and I was registered for college. I couldn't imagine. Well, I want you to know that that next August, one hot summer day, I packed the clothes that I had in a cardboard box. And I caught a ride to Arkadelphia, Arkansas. And they let me out in front of that dorm, and I set foot on that college campus. And you got to understand, it could have been Duke or Harvard to me. Arkadelphia was the biggest city I'd ever been in my life. And I walked out there and I thought, you know what? I have a chance. These people, these students walking here, these people don't know my background, but I am as good as everybody else is today. I have an opportunity to change my life. But I made my grades. And I would come home and think, I can't do it. I can't go back. And my mother would get my clothes ready, and she'd tell my music director at church, come on by and get her. I'm going to have her ready. And they'd load me up in that little Volkswagen, and off we'd go again. Angels that were put in my path. As a sophomore, I was nervous about what I was going to do, what I was going to major in. And a good friend of mine who was stationed in stationed in Vietnam, it could have been Iraq now, came home and he said, Sally, what are you doing? You're supposed to be in physical education. You've played basketball all your life. And I said, Byron, I'm not very good at that. He said, but you can coach. You're a leader. He took me back to college and introduced me to the people in that department. I switched majors and my life was happy. 3 months later, Byron was killed in Vietnam. Our little city was devastated. The day after the funeral, Mr. and Mrs. Poe called and said, can you come to our home? Yeah, sure I can. I went by, and you know what they had? They had boxed up all of Byron's textbooks. And that was back in the days when we used textbooks for at least 5 to 10 years. But they were there, literally hundreds of dollars of textbooks. And I was working 2 jobs to try to get all of my financial aid in order to try to pay for my way. I was so appreciative. And it was important to me that every time I opened that book, that I saw the name Byron Poe. On Sundays when I would come home, his dad would slip up to me and say a word, and he'd stick a $10 or $20 bill in my pocket. That was my spending money. That was my spending money. That's what I had for that week or that 2 weeks. You know what? I made it fine. I did it. I made it fine. With each certificate, with each degree, with each milestone in my life, I made sure that I called Cecil Holt, that I wrote him a letter and said, I'm here, I've done this, and it's because of you, because you believed in me. Today, I'm paying forward, and I'm paying forward with an attitude of gratitude. God put so many wonderful people in my path at every step of the way. At every step of the way. I am here to tell you that education is the way out. It is what gives you the hope. It restores the confidence that you may not have. And I'm going to tell you something else. There are angels in your life that are ready to help you make that step. There are many of them out here that I see that are still angels in my life. But they're there. So I would ask you today, would you please look for the angels in your life and pay that forward? Make sure that you've got a plan A, that you look at your life differently. I'd also ask you to think of this. Can you be an angel in someone else's life?